after a long and exhausting argument with my mother-in-law, where she tore into me for not being good enough, criticizing my job, my education, and even the way I carried myself, I reached a point where my patience could no longer stretch. Her bitterness had always been difficult to bear, but this time it escalated in a way I never could have imagined. Without warning, she picked up the hot water she had just boiled for her coffee and flung it toward me. I instinctively recoiled, my heart racing, the sting of heat grazing my skin. Thankfully, it wasn't scalding, but the intent behind it shook me more than the act itself. She had crossed a line that should never be crossed in any relationship, least of all family. I stood frozen, my breath trembling, while she glared at me with something close to satisfaction. In that moment, the reality of the situation crashed down on me. This wasn't just a difficult living arrangement or the occasional harsh word, this was cruelty, and I had endured far more than I ever should have. Enough was enough. If this is what you want, I said, my voice trembling at first but growing firmer with each word, I have no choice but to leave. To my shock, there wasn't even a flicker of regret on her face. In fact, she almost seemed relieved, as if she had finally won some twisted battle. That lack of remorse pierced deeper than any insult she had hurled before. I packed my belongings in silence, each folded shirt and zipped bag feeling like another weight lifted from my shoulders, though my heart ached at the thought of Eric, my husband, my partner, the man I had once believed would stand by me. I knew I could no longer live in a house where I was treated like an unwanted intruder. What my mother-in-law didn't realize was that her cruelty had pushed me into freedom, not despair. For months, I had been trading stocks quietly, using my knowledge from my days at the brokerage firm. What began as small, cautious investments had blossomed into something far more successful than I had ever dreamed. I was earning nearly $41,000 every month. I had supported the household quietly, never bragging, never revealing the full truth. Yet here I was, being told I was a burden. Her rejection no longer stung, it almost made me laugh, because even though she had thrown me out, I would be perfectly fine on my own. As I zipped my last suitcase, memories of how I had gotten here replayed in my mind. Eric and I had met in college, both ambitious students of economics, both dreaming of building careers in finance. He had been charming, intelligent, and supportive back then. We were partners, equals, chasing the same future. When he proposed, I accepted with joy, believing our lives would unfold like a storybook. But reality had other plans. After his father's death, Eric became protective of his mother, unwilling to leave her alone. He begged me to move into her house, insisting it was temporary. Out of love for him, I agreed, swallowing my doubts. At first, his mother put on a polite face, but soon after, her disapproval became obvious. The cold stares, the muttered words I couldn't quite make out, the way her smile never reached her eyes, all were early warnings I foolishly ignored. Her hostility then took shape in daily life. She woke me before dawn, demanding breakfast as though I were a maid rather than her son's wife. No matter how fast I worked, it was never fast enough. No matter how carefully I cooked, she found fault. My soup was too salty, my cleaning too sloppy, my laundry too careless. Every task became another weapon for her to attack me with. I tried to talk to Eric, hoping he would step in, but instead of support, I found him pale and withdrawn, harboring his own secret shame. When he admitted he had been fired, I felt both sorrow and compassion. He was struggling, and I couldn't bring myself to burden him further with my own misery. So I endured. Day after day, I put up with her scolding, her accusations, her endless demands. I told myself it was temporary, that once Eric found work, we could start over somewhere new, but he never did. Excuse after excuse spilled from his lips, while I became the sole breadwinner without ever receiving acknowledgement for it. And then came that morning, her shouting, her insults, her boiling anger, ending in that splash of hot water that severed the last thread tying me to that house. When I arrived at my parents' home, their shocked but loving embrace was a balm I hadn't realized I desperately needed. For the first time in months, I slept peacefully, no scolding voice to drag me from bed at dawn, no cold glares to wither me through the day. Yet, even as days turned to weeks, I found myself waiting for a message from Eric, a call, some sign that he cared enough to reach out, but silence stretched on. A month passed without a word. I told myself that maybe this silence was the answer I had been avoiding. My love for him dimmed, replaced by a quiet resolve. Divorce, once unthinkable, now seemed inevitable. And then, One early morning, the doorbell rang. Half asleep, I shuffled to the door, expecting perhaps a neighbor or a delivery, but when I glanced at the monitor, my heart nearly stopped. There stood Eric, and beside him, the very woman who had driven me away, her face unreadable as she stared into the camera. My stomach knotted. After weeks of silence, after everything that had happened, why were they here now? I stood frozen at the monitor, staring at the unexpected sight of Eric and my mother-in-law on the doorstep of my parents' house. My heart sank, a mixture of disbelief and irritation washing over me. After all these weeks of silence, weeks of healing, weeks of rediscovering myself, why had they come now? I muttered under my breath, baffled. What could they possibly want from me? Gathering myself, I pressed the intercom. Yes, what can I do for you? My mother-in-law's sharp voice shot back instantly, as harsh as ever. I've forgiven you, now come back home quickly. Her words made me blink in disbelief. Forgiven me, as if I were the one in the wrong. The absurdity of it nearly made me laugh, but instead, frustration rose like fire in my chest. Forgiving me? What exactly are you talking about? I asked, my tone clipped. I haven't done anything that requires your forgiveness. Before she could respond, I ended the call, unwilling to listen to her twisted version of events, but silence didn't follow. Instead, heavy fists pounded on the front door, rattling it on its hinges. Don't you dare hang up on me, my mother-in-law bellowed. Open the door, come on, let's go back. Her shouting echoed through the neighborhood, and my stomach tightened. The last thing I wanted was for the neighbors to wake up and start gossiping about the spectacle happening on our front porch. With a reluctant sigh, I unlatched the door and stepped aside. Fine, come in, I said coldly. They marched into the living room as if it still belonged to them. My mother-in-law plopped herself on the sofa like a queen on her throne, Eric hovering nervously beside her. I crossed my arms and stood before them, unwilling to sit. So, I began, my voice steady though my hands trembled slightly. What's the reason for this little visit? You insisted I leave, and now you're asking me to come back. Which is it? Make up your mind. My mother-in-law pursed her lips, then gave me a look dripping with disdain. Stop being childish. I've forgiven you, haven't I? I'm even willing to let an unemployed, uneducated person like you live in my house again. You should be grateful. Her words hit me like a slap, but instead of recoiling, I found myself laughing bitterly. Unemployed? You've got the wrong person. I'm not the one sitting at home all day, it's Eric. Or did he not mention that to you? The room went still, Eric's face went pale, while his mother's eyes widened in shock. What are you talking about? She demanded, whipping her head toward her son. Cornered, Eric finally admitted the truth. Mom, I was laid off, months ago. What? Her voice cracked with fury. You hid this from me, all this time? He stammered, fumbling for excuses. I didn't want you to worry, and besides, she's been supporting us. Her income from trading stocks has been enough. Supporting us? His mother's face darkened with rage, turning on him like a storm. You worthless child, relying on your wife while you sit around unemployed. The irony wasn't lost on me. After months of being berated as useless, here was the truth laid bare. I had been the one keeping everything afloat, while Eric sat silently, letting his mother tear me apart. My patience snapped. You expect me to go back to that house? To what? More insults? More abuse? Do you think I've forgotten the day you threw boiling water at me? Eric's head shot up, horror etched across his face. What? Mom, what is she saying? You did what? For once, his mother looked rattled. She was ignoring me. I lost my temper, that's all. That's all? Eric's voice rose, trembling with anger. You could have seriously hurt her. How could you do something so reckless? They began shouting at each other, voices overlapping in a furious storm. My father peeked from down the hall, concerned, but I gestured for him to stay back. This was my battle to end. Enough, I shouted, silencing them both. If you're going to argue, do it at your own house. Don't bring this chaos into my parents' home. My words landed heavily. For the first time, their arrogance faltered. My mother-in-law's tone softened, though I could tell it was forced. Just come back. We'll make sure this doesn't happen again. Eric added quickly, I'll find a job soon. Things will be different, I promise. But I saw right through them. Empty promises, temporary apologies, nothing but words to lure me back into the same cycle of mistreatment. No, I said flatly, I don't believe you. I know exactly how this will play out. You'll take advantage of me again, and I'll be the one suffering. I'm done." They fell silent, their eyes darting nervously, perhaps realizing that for once, I wasn't wavering. I excused myself to my room, leaving them in the living room's heavy silence. 10 minutes later, I returned with a single sheet of paper in my hand. Without ceremony, I placed it in front of Eric. "What's this?" he asked, picking it up. His eyes widened as he recognized my signature. "It's a divorce form," I said coldly. "I've already signed it. You just need to add your name." Eric's hands trembled. "No, no, please, this is too sudden. We can fix this." "Sudden?" I cut him off sharply. "You had an entire month to call me. You didn't. You let me walk away and didn't even bother to check if I was alive. Don't talk to me about sudden." He looked at me helplessly, but I refused to soften. I'm done with someone who hides the truth, refuses to work, and lets his mother destroy our marriage. This is your fault, both of you. Tears welled in his eyes, but eventually, resignation took over. With a trembling hand, he signed the form. "Don't regret this," he muttered bitterly. I straightened my shoulders, feeling lighter than I had in years. "The only one who will regret this is you." When they finally left, clutching their humiliation as tightly as Eric held the divorce papers, I knew the chapter had closed for good. 3 weeks later, the phone rang. It was my ex-mother-in-law. Her voice was no longer arrogant but desperate. "The electricity and gas have been cut off. You stopped paying, didn't you? Just help us one more month, please." I almost laughed. "That's not my responsibility anymore. Ask Eric. He said he'd find a job, remember?" But I ended the call and blocked her number. For the first time in years, my life was my own. No insults, no chaos, no endless sacrifices, just peace. Months later, on a quiet vacation, I was watching stock charts when an unexpected message lit up my phone. It was Eric. "I'm sorry for everything," it read. "I have a job at a factory now. Mom is still the same, but I miss you. Please come back." I stared at the message for a long moment, then hit block. That door was closed forever. 8 months later, life surprised me with something better. A friend introduced me to someone new, kind, dependable, respectful. With him, I felt valued, not used. We weren't rushing into marriage, but I didn't need to. For the first time, I was happy simply living in the present. And as I sat across from him at a cafe, laughing at something he said, I realized I had finally rebuilt my life. Not for Eric, not for his mother, for me.